What's up, Ego Hackers? Welcome to the C.S. Joseph Podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph, and this is Season 14, Episode 7. The ENTP and ISFP natural pair relationship. And one of the sources of the greatest pain in my life. Oddly enough. I guess it's not so odd, isn't it? Right? It is why I do what I do, right? Should I be so self-serving as to hope that my efforts should be, supported when it comes to eating at my own table, perhaps? Is there any way that I myself can actually find satisfaction in the world? Potentially with my own relationships. Who knows? Who knows? The natural pair. I have had the honor of experiencing the natural pair a few times in my life, and each one of those times I'm very thankful I got the opportunity. Very, very thankful. So, the ENTP and the ISFP. You know, we've talked about how the different natural pairs represent a particular principle or represent a particular thing. Like, for example, the ISFJ and the ENTJ being the power couple or the relationship about power. And the ISTP and the ENFP, which is an episode we haven't done yet, this will be the relationship about truth. Relationship of truth. They're like the walking ministry of truth, right? But what is the ENTP and the ISFP relationship all about? What is it? What is it supposed to be? What's the point of it? It's a relationship of miracles. The engine of miracles. A relationship that when these two come together, miraculous things happen. Did you know Adolf Hitler being an ENTP? Did you know that his woman, she was an ISFP? I guess it makes sense, right? Given that she'd have to be delusional, right? To be with someone like Adolf Hitler, right? I guess anyone would have to be delusional to be with a guy like him, right? I'm sure anyone would have to be delusional to be with a guy like Andrew Tate, right? Or Kevin Samuels, Malcolm X, Benjamin Franklin, King Solomon, Bruce Lee, C.S. Joseph. It's because it's rough. It's rough being with an ENTP. You know, as ENTPs, we have this problem where it's like, by default, people don't trust us. People find us very untrustworthy. So we're very intimidating. We're very scary to be with. We're so intense. So intense. And even just recently, I was accused of being too intense. Of, in terms of someone wanting to be in a relationship with me because I'm too intense. And they didn't want to because I'm too intense, right? I'm just like, no. I've been on the world a lot longer than you have. And because I have, well, I've seen things. I know things. I know what I want and I know what I'm avoiding. Not here to waste my time, not here to waste your time. And that's what it's all about, folks. Not wasting time, because time is the most important thing to an ENTP. Look at an ESTP, the most important thing to an ESTP is saving money, because time doesn't exist to them. Only materials exist to them. But to me, I don't care about material. I care about time. Time is the most precious resource. It really is. It is the most precious resource. And it's a very finite resource. It's the one resource that we spend and we don't get back. And because of that, I treat that resource with respect. A high level of respect. A higher level of respect than most people are even willing to consider. It's funny because I look at ISFPs and it kind of seems that they would agree with me on that perspective, which is great. I love that about them. I love that about them. ISFPs are amazing. They're amazing to me, especially like ISFP women. You know, with men judging women like art, yet the ISFP is known as the artist archetype, right? So out of all of the 16 types, an ISFP woman for sure is the embodiment of art itself, and yet men judge women like art, which means an ISFP woman has the potential to literally become the most beautiful woman who walks the earth, specifically because she is the embodiment of art itself, a representative of the apex of God's creation. I find that incredible, absolutely incredible. So based on that, oftentimes I can't help but love them. Although some of them make it really difficult for me to love them, that's for sure. Especially a lot of the complacent ones. ISFPs, let's be honest, are really delusional, right? But of course, an ISFP would say to an ENTP, okay, well, you're really controlling. Well, why? Why are ENTPs controlling? We're controlling because we know what makes us comfortable and what makes us uncomfortable. And the thing is that if we don't exert some aspect of control in our relationships, then we will oftentimes lose satisfaction and we will not be satisfied whatsoever. And this can end up becoming a huge problem. Very big problem. Because it's like, well, what the hell are we putting our effort into this relationship for if we're not getting any satisfaction in it whatsoever? And that's the thing. That's the thing. ENTPs, we're so unaware of our own personal investment when it comes to relationships due to FI Trickster that it's really hard to find somebody in the world who actually honors the amount of effort that we actually put into relationships. Thank God for SI Critic, because SI Critic has a similar perspective. It's pessimistic. It very much values effort. It very much values the effort it puts into things. And when combined with Introverted Feeling Hero, it understands that effort equals investment, as much as an FI Trickster could understand that that's the case. That's why an ISFP woman is the natural pair to the ENTP, because an ISFP woman, ENTP man that is, would actually appreciate the man's effort, especially when considering the love language of the ENTP is acts of service. Actually, ENTPs hate being inconvenienced. We hate it when obstacles are put in front of us. We hate it when we have to clean up other people's messes for them. We like our mates to be proactive, very proactive. Proactive to the point where we're willing to go out of our way to not... they are willing to go out of their way to not slow us down or put obstacles in front of us, because those obstacles represent just more crap we have to deal with when gaining our satisfaction. Those obstacles are a direct assault on our cognitive origin of satisfaction, ultimately fulfillment. Fulfillment for life, the fulfillment that we seek. ENTPs really ultimately want fulfillment, and they want other people's fulfillment as well. Why do you folks even think that I'm even doing this YouTube channel or this podcast or have this membership here? It's because I want you all to be fulfilled. I want you all to have life, and life more abundant. Above all, I don't want you to suffer in the same way that I have suffered. I don't want you to grow up the way that I grew up. I don't want you to have my past. And I want you to have a better future than the one that is laid out before me. And I'm willing to sacrifice everything for it. Maximum effort, like Deadpool will say. Or Luthen, the INTJ, Luthen's speech at the end of Andor, the series on Disney Plus, where he was directly asked, what do you give up? And he's like, everything. I give up everything for the sake of the rebellion. I give up everything to stand against the Empire. Just like the day will come where I will be forced to give up everything to stand up to the elite. If the reality of the situation is that he loved his countrymen in an era where the entire planet was severely racist. So it's just kind of interesting how you look at these double standards. You look at all the propaganda. Speaking of which, as a companion to this episode, I recommend you read Propaganda by Edward Bernays. Definitely consider that. And his mentor, Gustave Le Bon, who wrote The Crowd. And then those that Bernays trained, like Noam Chomsky, who wrote Manufacturing Consent, or The Madness of Crowds by Douglas Murray. Read all of these books. Come to a realization that the world as you know it is entirely fake and not real. It's not real. You know, and I can say these things because my family was in the camps. A lot of people don't realize that I'm 1/4 Jewish. And my family was in the camps. They're in Birkenau. Very tragic situation. But like I said, Hitler became the thing that he sought to destroy. And that's sad. That's how far ENTP bitterness can go. You know, just today, actually, was released Heart of Ice, The Confessions of an ENTP. It's a companion episode to this episode. I did not want to do this episode without that being filmed first, just so that people can understand intrinsically how ENTPs work from a relationship perspective, and how basically our entire lives we have this thing, this outer shell of ice, an ice shell of bitterness. The bitterness is our ice, and that bitterness can just cover our hearts in ice. And it's only the fires of NI, introvert intuition, the fires of desire, that can melt that very ice. It's the only thing. And then to prove that desire, to prove that introvert intuition, is affection. I tell you the truth. Hitler would not have mimicked his enemies. He would not have become the thing that he swore to destroy had somebody been affectionate to him. If someone had melted his hard heart of ice, and sure, he had his ISFP woman by his side. She was great, but still, the damage was done, the bitterness was there, and he would have needed way more time with her to get his heart of ice melted. There wasn't enough time. Sadly, he had to rise to the occasion and conduct the war before she had a chance to melt the ice around his heart. And that's the problem with ENTPs. Men or women, all ENTPs struggle in this way. We are literally all encased in a glacier. And who wants to risk like melting the ice and freeing us from the ice? It's like you're playing that game Diablo, and I love Diablo 2. Don't get me wrong, I love Diablo 2. It's like an amazing game. I look forward to playing it with my sons one day. Absolutely. Very much look forward to it. But Diablo, or Tyrael, the archangel, is it Tyrael that is encased in the ice? Maybe if they're a subconscious developed, subconscious focused ENTP, if they melt the ice, they might get Tyrael, the archangel. I say that because as a UDUF ENTP, malevolent envy, malevolence coming from unconscious developed, envy coming from unconscious focused, a malevolent, envious ENTP. So close to my superego. Is that somebody worth loving? Is it? Well, Hitler had something very similar to that. Was he worth loving? Was he? Was he worth freeing from the ice, only for there to be a demon unleashed upon the world? Is it worth it? Is there any hope for him? Is there any redemption? Is there any healing? Is there any hope, redemption, and healing for me? That's the point. But that's what the natural pair is. How can Hitler, how can I, as UDUF ENTPs with our octogram, how is it we even have hope? Well, that's where the natural pair comes in. Because that NI child, the flames of NI child, where that NI child is able to cross the minefield and everything is exploding around it, but somehow it makes it to the underside. Just like when I take an ISFP who's dear to me, close to my heart, treasure to me, an ISFP that I love dearly, right? And they think to themselves, this is it. He's going to abandon me. He's going to reject me. He's going to move on. I'll never have his time and attention ever again. I'll never have his loyalty again. And yet still, while I am malevolent, while I am envious, I still cannot help but show them compassion. Because, as the saying goes, those who suffer the most, right? Those who suffer the most are the people who smile the most. Those that hurt the most are the people who help the most, right? Hitler was no different. Andrew Tate's no different. Kevin Samuels is no different. Malcolm X is no different. Bruce Lee. All these men. No different. And yet here we are. Heart temple. The temple of passion. The temple of fire. Yet we are the greatest consumers of fire because our hearts, our literal bodies are encased upon this ice of bitterness. And bitterness is only healed through the fires of desire and the fires of affection. And while NI Hero is out there, NI Hero burns so bright, NI Hero can burn with the fires of 1,000 suns and free us from the ice. Just as quickly as it burns, it can burn out just as quick. And while I may be encased from the ice, my body is still cold, and the ice still forms back just as quick. This is why the golden pair is the highest highs and the lowest lows. And I learned that the hard way, multiple times throughout my life. Especially the INTJ women in my life. I knew 4 of them, actually. And I got close to each of them. But all of a sudden they realized there's a demon on the inside, that I'm freeing Diablo. And Diablo was freed. But they couldn't deal with it. They couldn't deal with it. Just as Yoda said, truly amazing as a child, right? I'm paraphrasing. Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, right? Truly amazing the mind or the heart of a child is, right? See, it would take the innocence and the divinity of a child, of an NI child, to reach to the demon encased in the ice and to provide the healing to the demon. To give the opportunity to the demon where the demon can actually potentially let go of its hatred and let go of its pain, let go of its bitterness. That what? Out of everyone in the entire world, a mere child could love a demon? Like Beauty and the Beast, right? A child could love the beast. A child could love the demon. The child frees the demon. And then the demon becomes the friend of the child and gives that child its power, because it's really only a child that can reach the demon. It's only the child that can provide healing to that demon. You know, extroverted intuitive heroes have this thing where they provide prophecy to other people in life. I had an any hero in my life come to me and tell me, hey, Chase, you know, the reality of the situation is like, NI child, that NI child, like, you know, that's what you're missing. Because that NI child provides that high level of acceptance from an ISFP standpoint, where that child will accept the demon. And then all of a sudden, your ego is accepted. Because the truth is, my ego was not accepted. Was not accepted in childhood. Was not accepted in my first marriage. Was not accepted throughout my 20s. And hasn't been accepted through mostly of my my 30s even, in a lot of cases. Extroverted feeling child. You know, I've learned that within my own life, I've had to hold on to my pain and make my pain the engine of motivation, and my hatred the source of my power, just like a Sith would. Just like Sheev Palpatine said that, you know, the advantages of being a Sith compared to a Jedi is that Jedi abandons all emotion, because unlike the Jedi, we actually feel. Goddamn right. So if I lived in the Star Wars galaxy and was part of the universe, I guarantee you I would be a Sith. A malevolent, envious Sith. But a Sith, because I am able to feel as a Sith, I would be compassionate as a Sith. A Sith that actually stands up for justice. A demon that seeks justice. While I am intimidating and basically everyone fears me, I am meting out justice upon those that deserve it. That is who I would be as a Sith. It's not about selfish ambition. It's about righteous ambition. That's what it's about. Righteous ambition. And that righteous ambition is not capable of a Jedi. No Jedi could be capable of that. The problem is that, like Hitler, Anakin Skywalker became the thing that he hated the most. Such is the fate of many a ENTP in this world. I suspect that if Hitler's ISFP woman was in his life much sooner, that wouldn't have happened. So for me, I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful for ISFPs. I'm very thankful for the art that they bring to the world. Because my extroverted sensing demon, my introverted sensing inferior is so uncomfortable and so hates so much the reality that I live in. The ISFP brings in art to the world and actually allows me to appreciate reality. And then I don't hate it so much. I don't need to destroy it so much. It's like, here I am, the Lord of Hell itself. And hell, let me tell you something about hell, folks. Hell is actually very cold. You burn in hell because you freeze in hell. Hell is frozen over. It is. Just like when you feel like you're burning when you have frostbite. That is what hell actually feels like, folks. Because in hell, there is no light. There is no sun. There is no glory from God. There is none of that. It is pure darkness, and it is cold. It's like eternal frostbite. And you burn in the cold. Because the presence of the Creator, the presence of the Sun, there's nothing there. It is a lifeless world. Because in order for there to be life upon a world, there needs to be light. That is why in the book of Genesis it is written, let there be light. But in hell there is no light. And while NI Hero burns, and it burns brightly, it burns out eventually. But the NI Child, it burns forever. And because it burns forever, that is why it is said, hope springs eternal. And then I could stand before any enemy in this whole world and say, I am hope. Why? Because if an NI Child can put hope their hope and place their hope into me, then I can take their hope and turn it into faith, such that while I burn in the cold flames, the cold frostbitten flames of hell itself, there's still hope. Still hope, because I know NI child still exists. That NI child, such that if I stand before the Son of God himself and he says, "Depart from me, I have never known you, you who have practiced lawlessness," his judgment is so just that I would say, "Yes, you're right." And I would walk willingly to my chains, into my cell, in the depths of hell itself, because his judgment is just. But I know that those who have entered upon his rest would still think of me and still miss me, one of them being an NI child, and that NI child would still want me to be there in the kingdom, such that one day that NI child would go before the Son of God, who has all dominion and authority over heaven, hell, and earth, and ask him, "Bring Chase to me." And, because it is written, "Love your wife as Christ loved the church, he who gave himself up for her." That if he really is the embodiment of that, if he really is the embodiment of masculine idealism as he is and as he should be, then of course he would grant that NI child their request and bring me to them. As a result, there's always hope. Always. There's always hope for me. Even if I burn in the depths of hell itself, in the cold dark. And that, folks, is why the ENTP and the ISFP relationship is, without a doubt, the relationship of miracles. Because it's miraculous that even NI child would be willing to burn and burn consistently in the presence of the icy cold of my bitterness, and still be willing to not only thaw the demon out, but bring warmth to the demon, and befriend the demon, and be there with the demon, and still choose, at the end of the day, to love the demon. Imagine that. Rise, and rise again, so that lambs become lions. That's some courage. And that's courage that can only be wielded effectively by NI child and its divinity. And it's so powerful with its divinity that it can not only free the demon, befriend the demon, but change the demon and bring healing to the demon. That's why I place a lot of belief and a lot of hope and a lot of faith in what is said in the Apocalypse of Peter. The Apocalypse of Peter goes like this. There's one line in the Apocalypse of Peter, and this is the one line that prevented the Apocalypse of Peter from being added to the biblical canon, even though it has more historical backing than half the Gospels. And that is the following. Jesus was speaking to his disciples just after he had resurrected from the dead, and he had all dominion and authority on heaven and earth given to him, so he could speak plainly. He didn't have to speak in parables anymore. And he had just finished giving a tour of hell, basically, to Peter. And then he said, quote, "It is for you that I am come, and I will give you everything, the kingdom that doesn't pass away. It is for you that I am come, and it is because of you and that at your word that I will have pity on all men. It's because of this that the human race will always have hope, no matter what, even beyond God's terrible judgment and God's terrible wrath. Even beyond that, there's still hope. There's hope for all of us. There's hope for me. There's hope for Hitler. There's hope for all of us. And one day, the day will come where all of mankind will be brought together. Why? Because of that divinity of the child functions. The ENFP may lead that movement in the kingdom to bring justification and ultimately absolution to the human race. But the desire comes from the NI child. And it is that desire that keeps me going every single day. There's always hope. All you out there who think there's no hope and you want to commit suicide or whatever, bullshit. There's always hope. If you're still breathing, that means you still got some fight in you. Just like that song called Good in the album called The Path by Akira the Dawn. Check it out on Spotify. I highly recommend it. It is absolutely a symbol of our future and a symbol of how the human race always has a future, no matter what. Especially if a little kid is willing to thaw out the demon from its encased ice, heal the demon, save the demon to a point, and help bring about that miracle and exercise the demon's power, or quite frankly, exercise the demon within, so that at last maybe I can become an angel. That's why there's always hope. Always hope. So, why are the ENTP and the ISFP drawn to one another? The natural relationship is the total package. It offers security, excitement, and a bond that is not easily broken. The natural offers stability and fun, but it offers acceptance. Just like that any hero made that prophecy to me upon my life, saying, for example, an ISFP will bring you that acceptance such that all of a sudden, in the first time in your life, Chase, your ego is accepted. Even though everyone else would reject it, everyone else fears it, everyone else fears the demon, for you are the Lord of Terror. For you are the embodiment, the actual incarnation of what everyone in the human race actually fears. And there's still hope even for me. Amazing. That is ultimately one example of the miracles. What does the ENTP provide the ISFP? Well, the ENTP dispels their delusion. Oftentimes their delusions consume them to the point where it's debilitating as they move from obsession to obsession. Isn't it any wonder that the demon encased within the ice, with their heart of ice, with their heart of hell, burning in the ice, burning in the frostbite, is it any wonder that there's still hope for them? Is there any wonder that there is the miracle of acceptance waiting for them? And that's beautiful to me. Entirely beautiful. A hidden aspect of God's creation that we are not exactly privy to or even aware of. And instead we become so arrogant as human beings that we actually think that there is no hope for some stupid reason. And then what? We off ourselves? Pathetic. No. There is no excuse. There's no excuse for... There's always hope. The theme of the natural pair is ease. It's not intrinsically volatile like the golden pair, which is all about affection, or inherently challenging like the pedagogue or the companion. It's natural because you can be yourself. This is the relationship where if you gain the advice of, hey, just be yourself, this is it. Because even the demon can still be itself and still find acceptance within the natural pair. The UDUF person who is so close to their demon, if not one with their demon, there's still hope, there's still acceptance, even for them, within the context of the natural pair. It's there. I promise. But ultimately, it is the engine of miracles. So, masculine idealism and solipsism. Let's talk about the masculine and feminine roles within the context of the natural pair. The ENTP's masculine idealism. It's almost to the point of Stockholm Syndrome. I said this before in How to Social Engineer ENTP. I talk about Stockholm Syndrome. My first time that I experienced sexuality was with an ISFP. My abuser was an ISFP. My first abuser was an ISFP. And I loved her. I stupidly loved her as she subjugated my life. I would have wet dreams of her for decades after the abuse was over. But it's Stockholm Syndrome. ENTPs, men or women, we have this thing where we just can't help but be compassionate and loving towards our abusers sometimes. It's one of the worst things about us. To the point where we get so used to the abuse we can't even recognize that we're being abused. That's the sad part. That's the sad part. We do that because we know the demon within. We know that our FE child is not accepted because our TI parent is harsh. People look upon us, afraid of us. People assume that we're up to no good, even though we never proved that. So we become the outcasts of society. We are the rogue, and that is why we are the rogue, ultimately. And that's where the masculine idealism comes to the ENTP. Where does the solipsism come in? The solipsism comes in where the ENTP woman puts her comfort above everyone. This is why ENTP women struggle with hypergamy probably the most, struggle with loyalty, and jump from man to man to man to man. I have not known an ENTP woman to, by and large, 9 out of 10 of them in my life that I have ever met, they're cock hoppers, basically. Hopping from cock to cock to cock. It's gross, but they don't know any different. Going from one abuser to the next with their Stockholm Syndrome, their innate, inborn, ingrained Stockholm Syndrome, which is amplified by their solipsism. Looking for comfort anywhere they can get it, and they find their comfort oftentimes in the men in their life, only to realize that they are just comfortable with the abuse in their life. That's how solipsism hits an ENTP woman. Let's look at an ISFP. Masculine idealism in ISFP. Gathering up treasure and sharing treasure. That masculine idealism with an ISFP. Willing to risk the dark in order to see the light. They want that knowledge so bad. They're willing to make that deal with the devil super quick. Because for some reason, they end up loving the devil. They love that ENTP woman. Because it is written, the bridegroom will present his bride to him without stain or blemish, and he will forgive her sexual past. I know that all too well. Oftentimes in my own life, I have forgiven the sexual past of women that I probably shouldn't have, much to my chagrin and much to my own suffering. But still, at the end of the day, I have to admit, I can't help but love them. Especially since I know Jungian analytical psychology, because, it's like that meme. You know too much psychology. You can not get mad at anyone. You end up loving everyone because you can explain the reason behind everything that everyone does anything. So as a result of that, my suffering continues. Because at the end of the day, the only thing I'm really guilty is loving too much and loving too intensely. The ENTP literally becomes the archetype of unrequited love. And that's why we become the demon encased in the ice. Because the ENTP archetype, out of all the archetypes, regardless of their man or woman, We suffer the burden of unrequited love more than anybody, to the point where I have to think maybe I'm pathetic. And the solipsism of ISFP women. So selfish that they want the knowledge of the demon that they are still also willing to make that choice. Not unlike Eve having sexual relations with the serpent in the Garden of Eden, because she selfishly wanted that knowledge of the demon. Wanted that knowledge of good and evil, right? To become like God, right? Yeah. Knowing ISFPs in my life, they all behave that way. The ISFP women. They all behave that way, and they all seek it. It's nice to be sought after. The cognitive origin of the ISFP is known as purpose. The love language of the ISFP is known as gifts. The cognitive origin of the ENTP is satisfaction. And the love language of the ENTP is acts of service, also known as contribution. Thank you, Duggo and Uberzerker, for educating me on this. God, that was so hard for me to accept. I always thought it was physical touch, but no, it's acts of service. I want my contribution to matter, but in relationships, my contribution often doesn't matter because women become so entitled to contribution through solipsism that they don't give back. They just take and take and take and take, and they don't reciprocate. ISFPs, they have extroverted feeling nemesis, so they often feel bad about themselves. They feel guilty from taking from the ENTP. So then they actually go out of the way to give back. And let me tell you something. There is nothing more satisfying than having a gift, a very artistic gift, a gift that is so meaningful that it brings satisfaction, such that the purpose of the ISFP, the cognitive origin of the ISFP, really represents the thing that can provide the most satisfaction to an ENTP. It's a miracle. Consequently, as the ISFP is trying to discover things in life and trying to figure out their purpose, they know that the ESFP's satisfaction, once it's reached, all of a sudden they really have gained their purpose. And the ISFP can actually tack on their purpose upon whether or not they are actually being satisfying to the ENTP. Isn't that amazing? And that's literally how the cognitive origins intrinsically work. But then you look at the shadow origins. The ISFP is going for discovery and trying to discover new things. The ENTP is all about reverence. And as the ENTP gains status and more respect for themselves, consequently, when they bring that to the ISFP, it helps the ISFP discover their purpose. Discovering their purpose. When the ISFP is exploring and willing to go out and explore in the world and take risks, that brings that much more satisfaction to the ENTP. So their cognitive origins feed each other, which is great. It's absolutely miraculous. So how are the basic origins being met? Primarily through the optimistic loops of extrovert intuition, introvert intuition versus introverted feeling, extroverted feeling, and secondarily the pessimistic functions of extroverted sensing to introverted sensing, and introverted thinking to extroverted thinking. In their subconscious, each type accesses the other's home temple. The ENTP's ISFJ subconscious accesses the body temple. The ISFP's ENTJ subconscious accesses the heart temple. Ultimately, each type's complementary origin, reverence for the ENTP, discovery for the ISFP, can still be met when both these types grow their subconscious. So, how do the ENTP and the ISFP view each other? So women view men as a business. So the ISFP or ENTP man must carry his burden of performance. What does the ENTP man look like? Well, he's always there. He always sticks around. He's always giving choices to the ISFP, always giving options. Not only that, always giving the ISFP goals, individual goals for that NI child to reach. And that helps the ISFP achieve. And the more they achieve, the more they gain their purpose, right? Or an ISFP man. The ISFP man, as he gains his purpose throughout his life, he becomes far more satisfying to is the ENTP woman, right? Then men view women as art. The ISFP or ENTP woman must carry her burden of submission and preservation of her beauty. So the ENTP woman who orbits her ISFP man will always be desirable for him, will always make him feel better and understand help him understand where his morals are, provide warning to him to make sure that he is always safe, he is always protected. And the ISFP woman who orbits her man, always burning the ice away, always providing that sympathy even for a demon, for example. That's powerful. That's miraculous. So how do you actually get into your natural power? Well, that's known as the test of the critic. We've talked about it many times. For the ISFP, you have the introverted sensing critic. ISFPs work very diligently. They put in a lot of effort in like every area of their life, in a big way, in an absolute big way, in a majestic way, in an amazing way. They're constantly doing this. So the ISFP works so diligently, and because they know that they could put in maximum effort. But when they see an ENTP, like Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds' version, he's always talking about maximum effort. No one puts in more maximum effort than an ENTP does. And then the ISFP is like, oh my God, I thought I was the hardest worker. Dang, the ENTP here is really the hardest worker. The test of the critic is basically, hey, that ENTP has to have enough introverted sensing development to be a harder worker than I am. And if that's the case, they have my respect. They have my reverence. They have my desire. Because I thought I was the hardest worker. And the ISFP deals with the fact that sometimes they can be idle. Virtue and vice, right? Season 7 of the ISFP. So from that perspective, they have to deal with that. And they see the ENTP putting more effort in them. And that's the test of the critic from the ISFP to the ENTP. But the test of the critic from the ENTP to the ISFP is the test of knowledge, extroverted thinking, critic, where the ENTP is like, hey, I'm super knowledgeable. It's so interesting. Like, I met an ISFP the other day in a natural food store, and I pride myself on my knowledge of health, for example. But she had so much more knowledge of health and things than I did. And I was just amazed by that. And in that moment, she passed the test of the critic because I'm like, oh my God, she's like way more knowledgeable than I am. Extroverted thinking, inferior, being more knowledgeable than I am. And there's another ISFP in my life who, in so many ways, is so knowledgeable and collects so much knowledge like a sponge so quickly. I'm just amazed by it consistently, amazed by the knowledge that they gather up for themselves and use, not just for my benefit, but for the benefit of those closest to them in their life. That is the test of the critic. That is how like, for example, how she passes the test of the critic from that perspective because of that knowledge. And it's amazing to me. It's absolutely amazing. It's miraculous that someone else in the world would care that much about that knowledge. So that is the test of the critic. And that's ultimately how the natural pair, any natural pair gets together, but this is specific to the ENTP and the ISFP relationship from that natural pair perspective. So natural pairs tend to be the longest lasting, but they're also the most difficult to get into. The barrier of entry is the test of the critic. However, there is one guiding principle that is present within natural pairs. Each type has to believe the following: that person would be successful in life even if we'd never met. So it brings about the test of the critic. The test of the critic is as follows: their inferior must be more developed than my critic. The ENTP looks at an underdeveloped ISFP and feels, my TE critic listens better than your TE inferior. I'm more aware of standards and research and more knowledgeable than you. How is that possible? The ISFP looks at an underdeveloped ENTP and thinks, my SI critic has more perseverance and is more disciplined and puts in more effort to things than your SI inferior. How is that? How can I tolerate more than you? That's ridiculous. It's as if the critic is looking at the other's undeveloped inferior function and thinking, What is this generation coming to? What are they teaching in schools these days? The critic wants to find hope and the promise of potential in the other's inferior, a promise of the critic's own hope and return to youth. Failing the critic's test violates the basic principle that binds these types together. They would be successful in life even if we'd never met. But let's say that both these types have passed the test of the critic and now they are in a relationship. How does that work? What does it look like, right? So we get into the mechanics of the ENTP and ISFP relationship. So compatibility, right? The introverted feeling hero speaks directly to the extroverted feeling child. The extroverted feeling child looks at the introverted feeling hero and it's like, wow, you're like my hero. You know, you're actually like a really good person. And it's so funny to me, like as an FI trickster, most people think I'm a really horrible person, but what few morals and principles that I actually have as an ENTP, I know they are good. And I stick to them and I hold fast to them. And then I see the FI hero also holding fast to it in the same manner, right? That's amazing. Or the introvert intuitive child speaking to my extrovert intuition hero, such that they would still want me, they'd still desire me, even though everyone else in the whole world hates me, even though everyone else in the world treats me as if I am Hitler, for example. Even though I am the Lord of Terror, they would still want me. Even though I am the demon encased in the ice, and they melt that ice, and they would still want me. Wow. Miraculous. In the natural pair, extroverted functions always have introverted functions to consume. The natural pair excels at creating and maintaining energy. Within the natural, each type's hero function is pumped by the other child. The natural is magnetic because each child idolizes the other's hero. The theme of the child's hero follows from the natural. The hero and child creates the fun, and the parent inferior creates protection and safety. The parent provides relief to the other's inferior. Their extroverted sensing parent constantly going out of the way to make me comfortable and safe. And my introverted thinking parent is there to dispel all of their delusions that would hold them back, obsessions. Then they obsess over their delusions. And then I come along and it's like, hey, that's not accurate. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your effort on that. And they're like, oh, thank God, you're right. Okay, cool. I'll put my effort elsewhere. And they feel like they're free from the shackles of their own delusions, from the ghosts that haunt them, their ghosts being their obsessions. So let's look at the optimistic functions. Extrovert intuition hero to introvert intuition child. The ENTP absorbs and is filled up with the bottomless desire of introvert intuition child. The ISFP finds the ENTP endless freedom, and the ENTP will guide them on their best path forward, fulfilling their purpose and achieving their goals. Introverted feeling hero to extroverted feeling child. FI hero finds a compassionate sounding board in the ENTP. Extroverted feeling child will always be attentive to the shifting moods and deep moral well of the ISFP's sensitivity and expression. Their FI hero's values provide both a rudder for the relationship and protection for the ENTP's often absent sense of self-worth. Now let's look at the pessimistic functions. Introverted thinking parent to the extroverted thinking inferior. The ENTP's TI parent is the processor that protects the ISFP from the false thinking or delusions they absorb from others. Extroverted thinking inferior finds a reliable and powerful protector in the ENTP who will help the ISFP develop their moral philosophy because it will be based in truth, not just perception. And then the extroverted sensing parent to introverted sensing inferior. SE parent provides relief and ease to the ENTP. The ISFP also encourages the SI inferior to pursue the practices that build up the ENTP's strength. The ENTP finds the ISFP someone who finally gets it and removes burdens. The ENTP can finally experience lightness, if just even for a moment. But what happens when things go wrong? What happens when things go wrong within this relationship? The biggest risk of every single natural pair is enablement. Enabling normalizes destructive or irresponsible behavior. And I've talked about this many times. I'll use the example again because trying to do each of these lectures from a standalone perspective, you see homeless couples, they are natural pairs because they are just constantly enabling each other, and they can enable each other into the ground. That can be a huge problem. What causes the enablement? It's when the hero-child cognitive loop never stops. This is caused by absent parent functions. So for the ENTP and the ISFP, these loops manifest as chasing the next high of what any child wants and what any hero can provide, without much thought on the pursuits, if the pursuits are good for them, or if they're like a waste of time, or if it's wasted effort, for example, because the expert intuition hero just wants to make the NI child's day, for example. And that's ultimately the any hero, NI child loop. Riding the FI hero, FE child emotional roller coaster of moodiness. This is for introverted feeling hero to the extroverted feeling child loop. It becomes an emotional roller coaster of moodiness that will eventually lead to entitlement in both the ISFP, the caretaker, and they're taking care with their ESFJ's unconscious, and the ENTP, the caregiver. Emotions, not truth, will consume this relationship if the emotional fondling perpetuates into a bottomless pit. Without the parent functions involvement, which is SE parent and introverted thinking parent, the living virtues are often suppressed. My living virtue of compassion, right? And their living virtue of being generous. And the deadly sins are expressed more often. So, do you think that the ISFP will be generous if they're only consumed with how they feel and what they want, if I hear it NI child, without a concern for others' experience or sympathy for their suffering? The ISFP has no reason then to invest in others, much less an ENTP. Will the ENTP be compassionate if they're just trying to consume desire and gratitude from others? An ENTP's ability to express compassion and to provide healing to others and to give other people a future and a hope, because it is written, "For I know the plans I have for you, to not bring harm to you, to prosper you, and to give you a future and hope." Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. That's what ENTPs are ultimately for, right? Will the ENTP be compassionate if they're just trying to consume desire and gratitude from others? An ENTP's ability to express compassion and to provide healing is dependent on their commitment to the truth. Without the parent function, there is no one to challenge the hero. The success or failure of this relationship hinges upon the parent function. And this brings in what we call the test of the parent, the engine that maintains the natural pair. The necessity of the parent. When the critic is the barrier of entry into the relationship, known as the test of the critic, the longer test of the parent sustains the relationship. The critic gets you into the relationship, but the parent keeps you in the relationship. So why the test of the parent? The parent is testing for humility. Humility demonstrates that each type will let the other's parent function guide their own inferior function. This is like where we talk about guidance functions. Guidance functions are basically parent and child functions, but it's ultimately up to the parent to lead that guidance, not the child, right? So why is the parent's presence so vital? Each parent serves two essential roles for the ENTP and the ISFP. The first role is in interpreting and interrupting and refining the hero-child loops. The second role is putting the appropriate amount of pressure on the inferior. So what does extroverted extroverted sensing parent do? Extroverted sensing parent must interrupt the extrovert intuition to NI, my hero, my any hero, to their NI child, for example, and it must interrupt the loop of possibility and boundless desire. Reality and its consequences must be accounted for. The extroverted sensing parent brings the emphasis on action that guides the relationship to have something to aim for each day. Extroverted sensing parent ultimately needs to be there to ensure that, for example, NI child has goals and that the ENTP's effort is directed in the right location. That's the whole point of it, right? And then it also must put pressure on the SI inferior to openly embrace new experiences, however slowly or poorly the ENTP may perform, so that they will continue to grow and develop their hard drive of personal experiences. The ENTP will aspire within the extroverted sensing parent's guidance, which is also miraculous. Introverted thinking parent. Introverted thinking parent must interrupt the introverted feeling hero to my extroverted feeling child loop with a dose of truth. Accuracy and logic, whatever the emotional cost, must be the leading voice in this natural pair. I actually had one such conversation recently with an ISFP where I made it very clear that they were not acting in truth, that they were not being true to the plans and the goals and the things that I had set out for them, as they utilize this to prove their desire. And that's absolutely important. This introverted thinking parent making the crooked ways straight, basically. That straight way that leads to me. You see? And then also, introverted thinking must also put pressure on the extroverted thinking inferior to both remain open-minded and engage in research and inquiries and to question things. The extroverted thinking inferior must be pushed to pursue achievement and status that will make their ENTJ subconscious grow all the more. As a result, the burden of these types expressing their living virtue and using their deadly sin as well is a responsibility shared by each type's parent function. Each parent basically gets to raise the other person's inferior function. Ultimately, each parent must take responsibility for the other person's growth. Your parent function has to become the guidance function for their inferior. Throughout my life, I've had the honor and the privilege of being in sexual relationships with ISFPs. And honestly, while I passed the test of the critic with my first relationship with an ISFP, I failed at the test of the parent. I took the relationship for granted. And since then, I have never taken the ISFP relationship for granted. Such that at any moment where things might seem a little off kilter, I have to have the courage to use my TI parent and subject them to the icy cold sword of truth, and hit them with it and be honest with them, honest to the point, and telling them the facts, even if it hurts them, so that they understand exactly what the consequences are as a result of their actions, as a result of their anti-child wanting, leading to potentially good actions with their SE parent or bad actions with their SE parent. If I don't tell them the truth and tell them the truth about my reactions, my SI inferior reactions to their actions with their SE parent, they're not going to know any different, and that would be basically me setting them up for failure. Consequently, the extroverted sensing parent's job is to make sure that my effort is being placed into the right place. And within my first relationship with an ISFP woman, I ultimately failed at that. But she also failed because she never actually provided challenge. Her SI critic doubted me entirely, doubted that I would make good on my word, doubted that I would make good on my promises, ultimately to the point where she could not even fulfill my number one need as an ENTP, the number one need as any ENTP out there, and that is to provide trust to the ENTP, to trust me. She chose not to trust me, and all of a sudden I find out she's in Texas, gone, away from me, because we didn't pass the test of the parent. And then throughout my life, luckily, I've had the opportunity to actually pass the test of the parent, or at least utilize the test of the parent consistently as a way to sustain and maintain relationships with ISFPs in my life, especially one in particular, which I am very grateful for, very thankful for. There's another situation, and I regret this so much, where even in the context of a friendship, not a sexual relationship, I was not there. I was not there to provide the test of the parent, to provide my introverted thinking parent to my friend, who was my best friend, Conrad. And just 5-6 weeks ago, he himself. He did something so morally wrong that I just cut him out of my life. I shouldn't have cut him out of my life. I shouldn't have burned the bridge. I should have just challenged him and used my TI parent to grind him into dust, to grind his delusions into dust, and to be there to challenge him and to sharpen him. For it is written, as iron sharpens iron, so does one man to another. But I wasn't there to sharpen him. And because of that, he killed himself, and he left behind his ENTP wife and their son. It's one of the greatest regrets of my life. And I will never do that again. I am doubly committed, triply committed to always telling the truth to the ISFPs in my life, even if it hurts them, because it is for their benefit. That is, after all, the point of being malevolent ENTP, because it is malevolent for their benefit. And I am proving to them that I love them when I challenge them with the truth. And I wasn't there for him. I wasn't loving enough to tell him. And I lost him. I lost him. Conrad, I miss you. Go with God, my friend. I love you. I'm so sorry. I tell you the truth. If for some reason the Son of God looks upon me and says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant," the day will come where I will go before the Son of God, who would be in effect my husband, and I will ask him to bring you to me, so that I can have a chance to make it right again. I'm so sorry for abandoning you and not being there to bring you the test of the parent, to give you a chance. And I took that chance away from you because I was weak. But never again. Never again. I'll never allow that to happen again. I am heart temple, full of passion. I have to prove my passion. I have to prove my love by telling the truth. The test of the critic is great to get it started, but I have to prove it, and I have to prove my love with the test of the parent. And I hope the rest of you out there who watch this will do the same. Don't do what I have done. And while, yeah, he made that decision, and ultimately I am not responsible for his death, I certainly have culpability, and I certainly played my part because of my weakness. I know in my heart, I know in my gut, that if I wasn't weak, and if I just told him the truth, he'd still be alive today. And that is a burden I will carry with me, a wound that is becoming a scar that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. And just as I do every 26th of February, my day of mourning that I observe every single year, where I mourn the loss of my first love, where I mourn the loss of my grandfather, where I mourn the loss of my daughter, Kira, where I mourn the loss of my former best friend, Lawrence. God, I miss him. And I mourn the loss of Conrad, my friend. All of you will not be forgotten. And all of you tattooed upon my soul as scars upon my soul. I will never allow myself to be that weak ever again. Never. I love you all too goddamn much to fail again. Thanks for watching and listening, folks. I'll see you on the next episode.